Hi, and welcome to Spooky Hours. My name's David Saunderson, and today we're talking to Rob Pyke from Veritas Paranormal, a paranormal group that's located in Leeds in the north of England, and have been doing some great work recently in the last, the last couple of years, doing a lot of charity events and bringing a lot of people into the paranormal that may not have had the experience of hunting ghosts, as it were. How are you, Rob?
Fine, thanks, David. How are you?
Good, thank you. You're surviving the heat wave, are you?
More or less.
It is. There's a heat wave. I think it's 21 at the moment, and it's been going for a week. So people who are watching this in the future will find that this is what a heat wave looks like in England. So Rob, as I said, you've been doing Veritas Paranormal now for about 18 months, but you've been involved in the paranormal a lot longer. I believe about 40 years. Now you must have been a mere child when that started. How did you get involved in all this?
You're too kind. Yeah, 40 years. God, that's a long, long time. It all started, I suppose, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, around about 8 or 9 years old. My gran had passed away on my father's side, and it might have been night terrors as a child. It could have been anything easily, logically explained, but it sounds like physical abuse, sisters, but I was woken in the middle of the night by what felt like an almighty slap across my face. I loved my gran. Whether or not she felt the same way or not, I don't know, to be honest, but it was so vivid. Even my cheek was burning when I woke up. And the smell of her talcum powder in my bedroom was so vivid. And like I say, I was about 8, 9 years old. Now, my dad said to me many, many years later that after his mother had passed away, he would often see her just stood at the end of my parents' bed. He didn't tell me that, obviously, at the time, because I was only 8, 9 years old, but he said that, like I say, many, many years later. And whether or not, looking back, it was night terrors, or whether it was Gran giving me a slap across the face or not, I'm not sure. Just to fast forward, let's say 10 years or so, I was living in Scotland at the time and driving down the banks of Loch Lomond with a friend of mine in the car, Jason. It was winter, cold, obviously. It's Loch Lomond in Scotland. It was cold. We had the heating on in the car, and I saw round a bend coming up. I saw what looked like a hunched figure walk across the road. I didn't say anything to Jason at the time, but as we passed the spot where the hunched figure looked like it went across the road, the car just went icy cold. Even though the heating had been on for quite some time and it was a warm car, the car just went icy cold. Again, I didn't say anything, but I pulled over about a mile up the road. And I said to Jason, "Did you?" And I didn't complete the question, but he said straight away, "Yeah, I did. I saw that." And I was like, "Whoa!" Again, I'm the kind of person.
What do you think it was?
I've got no idea. Again, only up until the last few years or so, my mother said she thought she saw what looked like a monk walk across the road on Loch Lomond side. Now, there was obviously monasteries all around that area, or at least one that I know of, at least. But like I said, whether I saw something or not, I don't know. I'm the kind of person, David, where, and I'm sure there's many, many people like this, 99% can easily be explained away. On a night, an investigation, what you see, what people see. But it's that 1% that you've got to take away with you and come up with the answer. And sometimes there's no logical answer to what you see. And that was just one of those case moments.
So that's good, because we all have lots of people have experiences like that. But where did you go from the jump from saying, hell, that was a weird thing, to I want to go and start investigating that?
Well, fast forward another 10 years, late 20s. I was working for Durham Police as a police community support officer. My colleague Claire and I go out on patrol. I think the early years of Most Haunted had started by then as well, I think. Yes, they had. And I was watching that of an evening, loving it, with Richard Felix and the like, and so on and so on. And Claire said to me one shift, just completely out of the blue, that she'd been on a ghost hunt. I was like, really? How do you do that kind of thing? Who knew those kind of things existed, that kind of available to the public? Anyway, she went, and she said that for good 2 weeks after she'd been, she saw things in a house. She heard movement of a nighttime that she hadn't heard before. She saw what she thought shadows. The group that she went with, they didn't go through a protection, and the medium that she'd spoken to said, you need to do a protection before investigations. And she was telling me all of this. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet and go along. And I was a bag of nerves you would never believe. If anybody had have stood behind me, I would have jumped at my own skin, I promise you. But it was the first time I thought, right, I'll go along. Really interested in this because of what's happened previously over the years. And nothing happened. Not a thing. Not a dicky bird. Nothing on the night happened whatsoever. But that got me intrigued. And I thought, right, okay, fine. I've been brave. I've gone along. Nothing's happened. Now I want to go back again, and I want to get touched. I want to see something. I want to smell something. And I went along for the next time, and we heard a few taps on the next investigation, which we couldn't explain. And it's developed from there. I suppose my holy grail, and I say this with the utmost respect, would be to see a full-scale apparition. I think everyone's in the paranormal field, that's the holy grail to an extent. And that's what I would still love to see. I would love to pass a message. I'd love to communicate. And I'm going to keep going because it's more of a passion than anything else. And I just mentioned a couple of seconds ago, there's one avenue that we've been down, which we continue to go down, and which we will always go down, is the respectful side. Because these people, these spirits who we're trying to communicate with, they could well be relatives, could well be my gran, could well be my dad, bless him, it could well be relatives that we're speaking to. And we will never stand up in a room and demand spirits to come forth and do this and stand on their head. They're not circus performers, they're relatives. So we will be respectful always.
So it seems like that you sort of had your first hit, as it were, at one stage, and now you continue to get going back, trying to get that next hit. That's probably, I'm trying to use a bit of an addiction thing there.
It is an addiction. It is. That is exactly what it is. And this is what, late 20s now. Shall I carry on the little journey?
Yeah.
Anyway, fast forward again, I suppose, another 10 years. And my wife and I moved to Leeds back in 2010. My wife and I went on a holiday. We went to the Norfolk Broads. We went on a canal barge, which wasn't the best holiday, but never mind. I saw advertised a ghost hunt one night in Great Yarmouth at the old Toll House Jail, I believe it was. And we went along, and there was a medium there. We went in. The first thing that the medium said to my wife was, "You're gifted." And she said other things as well, which were like, "Who is this person? How do you know these things?" She was good. She really was. Anyway, we made friends with Chrissy, the medium. To the extent was Chrissy started her own group, who she asked us to come along and host events, and all for charity, which we did. Chrissy lives down in Gloucester, and unfortunately, there was quite a few of the events were down south, down Gloucester area, and with us being up in Leeds, I mean, yourself, it writes the whole weekend off. You get the paranormal hangover the day after. We have day jobs, my wife and I, normal paid jobs to keep the roof over the head. But when you go on a ghost hunt on a Saturday night, Sundays are right off, and that's the weekend gone. You're back to work on the Monday morning. So we came up with Veritas Paranormal, which I'd say the majority of our events are in the northern part of England. That's not saying we won't travel elsewhere, because we will, and we are doing. But yeah, so that we can drive home in a reasonable time and have a reasonable night and then have a Sunday off, that's why we've formed Veritas. And again, the charitable donations in every single one of our events continues with Veritas.
I think being based in Leeds, you're not short of haunted places anyway, are you?
We're completely spoiled. I've got York down the road as well, but let's stick to Leeds. There's enough here going on, you know.
I think Leeds probably doesn't get enough. I mean, yeah, you are near York, and obviously that's seen as one of the most haunted places in Britain with all that sort of history and the shambles and things like that. But tell us a bit more about Leeds, because I just don't think it gets the respect for hauntedness that it probably deserves.
Well, for starters, a lot of people say, and I'm a firm believer of this, that watercourses tend to invoke spiritual energy. We've got the River Calder running around one side of Leeds. We've got the Leeds-Liverpool Canal running around the other side of Leeds. We're right in the middle of two massive water sources. Leeds has got some amazing locations, absolutely stunning locations as well. We don't really have to travel all that far to have a good night. There's Leeds Town Hall. Do you want me to go through a few examples?
Please do. Please tell us about them.
Fortunate enough, I worked for a period of time for Leeds City Council. And we've got Leeds Town Hall. One of our office areas was in the old Victorian cells, which my colleagues were flabbergasted that I was into this kind of thing. But I used to sit down there and do my work from time to time and just listen out and anybody there, so on and so on. But story has it that Charlie Peace, an old Leeds resident, he was on the run from the police for murdering a neighbour in Sheffield. He was shipped back to Leeds before being hung at Armley Jail. And story has it that Charlie still walks the corridors of the Victorian cells. Did I get a message from Charlie? No, unfortunately not. But it wasn't for the want to try, and I'll tell you. Moving on, you've got Thackeray Medical Museum right next door to St James's Hospital. Again, a massive former old workhouse and also a former hospital. We've been there once. We're going back again next year. We've seen all sorts down in the basement area, in the old streets area. You've got Kirkstall Abbey Museum with the old tunnel that goes from the museum under the road through to the Kirkstall Abbey. It's in ruins, is the Abbey, so we can't necessarily count and investigate in the Abbey with the glorious weather that we have obviously here in England all the time. So we're limited to the museum. We have got Armley Mills. We've got Thwaite Mills. It's such an old industrial town with a lot of old workhouses. And a lot of people watching this will appreciate the trauma, the torture that young children had to go through working in the workhouses all those many years ago. And again, we do it respectfully, but we've got this right outside.
I was in Leeds just before lockdown, funnily enough, and it was snowing, so that sort of shows you compared to what it is today. And I did recognise it had such lovely building, and there was obviously quite a lot of money there at one stage with all the money from the mills. So, do you get access to those kind of buildings, some of the more fancy sort of ones, or is it some place it's hard to get into?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the good thing is, we always obviously, like I said, we raise money for charity, like I mentioned on every event. And we always point out to the locations that we'll be raising money for X voluntary organisation or Y or Z or so on. And it does tend to open a lot of doors for us to come in and investigate. The good thing is that they usually lower the location fee for us because the less the fee is, the more that we can donate to charity. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So yeah, Town Hall, Armley Mills, Abbey House Museum, a lot of those do reduce the fee substantially, if not waiver it at times for us as well, which we can make hundreds on a night for any given charity. It's never the same charity. It's always something different, but one that's potentially poignant at the time. But yeah, the buildings, they are stunning. And like I say, well, I mean, like you said, the money that was in Leeds and still is in Leeds to an extent goes back to the old mills, the mill owners, and so on and so on. Gorgeous buildings, though.
So you tell us about the investigations you do. Like, yes, some of these are events where you're bringing people in. sort of for a show. It is, because people going in there, they're not going to get the same kind of experience that you might get yourself if you were doing it by yourself. But what have you discovered in Leeds through your investigations?
Well, we only take along small groups. We only take along groups of. We only invite 15 to 20 guests at any one time. 20 would be probably a maximum. My wife and I, obviously, because we do this in our own time, we don't take any penny ourselves. We give the whole lot to charity. So with a small group of guests, we basically consider them all as having an extra 15 investigators with us on the night, which makes absolute sense. And they have a great time. We're not time constrained. We can go around, we can speak to everybody. We've got a wide range of equipment, both old and new, which we introduce the equipment to the guests. Make sure that they're comfortable using it, and then obviously they'll get a free time period at the end. I mean, the good thing is we went to, great one for you, the place over in Todmorden in near to Halifax, West Yorkshire area. There's an old Unitarian church over there, which we've been there 3 times. The third time was just the other week. But the first 2 times, well, the first time, let me rewind. First time we went, I booked it. And I said to my wife, Anne-Marie, says, this could potentially be the quietest night we've ever had on an investigation. It's a church for, unbelievable. Anyway, we went. There was only 6 people came along with us that night. Now, the 6 people who came along with us, before we did a protection at the start, went down to the cellar area, called out for spirits to come forward and do their worst. These 6 people who are friends, family friends and so on, came back up about 5 minutes later with physical scratches on their arms, on their neck. Scratches were in 3s as well. They hadn't rubbed themselves against a wall or hit anything. The scratches just appeared. Excuse me. The night went on. My wife moved a table to use for doing automatic writing, Ouija board and so on. As she moved the table, an almighty smell of sulphur. Now there was no grate underneath this table or anything where the smell could come from, which again, we put that to one side, something else we're going to have to take home with us. Me and my brother-in-law went to the bell tower. There's a cellar in the bell tower area. We went down to the cellar area. We were calling out. We heard 3 almighty bangs up in the bell tower, and it wasn't the bell chiming. There was no wind or anything at all like that. The 3 bangs, again, couldn't explain. There was nobody up there whatsoever. And went on the Ouija board at the end of the night, and something, I'm not going to say the word demon. I'm not going to say that at all, okay? But I'm going to say that something negative did come through on the board, to the extent that somebody who was there on the night did go away with a severe dose of depression, and that lasted for a good year plus, until Chrissy, who I've mentioned before, she did something. I don't know what exactly she did. She took this person off room and on their own, but they said that it was like a weight getting lifted off their shoulders, and they've never felt so down in the dumps over the last year or so previously after this investigation. We went a second time. We didn't get quite as much. One of our guests did capture something. We haven't been able to explain it. We've tried to debunk it as objectively as we possibly could. The photograph is on our website. If I could mention that, David, can I?
Absolutely. We will put the link to your website in the bottom.
Brilliant.
So people can find about all your investigations and stuff. So keep
Thank
going,
you.
Rob.
So website, follow the link. Please feel free to do so. We've only got 2 photographs on there. One of these is from the church. Make of it what you want to make of it. I'm not going to tell you what's on the photograph. Make your own minds up, because then I'm not putting anything in your minds. We've got another photograph captured from Steelhouse Lane Prison in Birmingham. Again, make your own minds up what you see. I'm not going to put thoughts inside your heads first, okay? I'd be happy to get any feedback as well. You can contact us via the website as well. But that was Todmorden Church. It just blew us out of the water. And
So
like
that's near Halifax, is it, this church?
It's, I suppose it's nearer to Oldham, to be fair, but it is in West Yorkshire, so just on the border.
Okay. So that's interesting that you're in a church, though, because it's a working church? It's
Well,
operating, or is it an old church? How do you get into a church?
yes and no. It's what's called a Unitarian church,
Oh, okay.
which I'm not going to go into details about that, but it is maintained by a voluntary group. There's no on-site vicar or priest, shall we say.
Yep.
Now, my wife came up with a good kind of theory, I suppose. Look at most, I'd say 90% of churches, they have a priest or a vicar on site, living in the rectory or nearby, or so on and so on. This does not have, if you want to call it, and I sound like a right Burke saying this, like a guardian angel watching over the place, like a guardian there on site. Todmorden Unitarian Church doesn't have that. And whether or not that made a difference to the negative side that came through or not, I don't know.
Was it previously a COE or a Catholic church or anything like that?
To be fair, I don't know.
Okay. But you think basically whatever's happening now, there's no one there keeping an eye on the place, so wicked things could be on, doing wicked things.
Yeah.
Okay, but it sounds quite gruesome that for people saying you get scratches and all sorts of things, and you had some poor soul leaving the place with some kind of depression.
Like I say, it was an investigation that I'll never forget, just for what we experienced on the night, and experiences that we couldn't logically explain, which we always try and find that explanation. You know that yourself, but we couldn't come up with a logical explanation for both the investigations that we did there. It just blew us away.
So what have you taken from all these investigations? Like, you take individual evidence and you come up with an idea of what's happening in that place. But from your experience, what is it that we're all talking about here? What is the paranormal? What are ghosts?
If I knew that, I'd be a millionaire. Honestly, even the equipment that we use, no equipment is proven to capture evidence of the paranormal. You look at any person down history who have come up with an account of the paranormal, they've seen it with their own eyes and ears. At the end of the day, that is all you need, your own eyes and ears. I once saw the most beautiful kingfisher bird when I was 15 years old. Saw it at the edge of the river. Stunning blues, oranges, reds. It was gorgeous. I haven't got a picture of it because I didn't have a camera with me. And I didn't record its sound either because it chirped away beautifully. I didn't have that either. But it's something that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Some of the things that I've experienced with the paranormal as a child, as an 8-year-old, as a 19-year-old, 20s, 30s, 40s, I haven't particularly captured them on film. The scratches, there is some photographs, but the personal photographs of the people who came along. The bangs, didn't pick up any recording from that either. But at the end of the day, Veritas Paranormal, like I've said to you, we give all of our money to charity. So we're not in this for financial gain. So I've got no reason whatsoever to make things up and tell people tales and expand on the truth and so on, because we give all our money away to charity. Like I say, we're not in this to come with us, we'll charge you 20 odd pounds, we'll put it in our pockets, keep a roof over our head. That is not what Veritas Paranormal is all about. Am I going off topic here a little bit? I am, aren't I?
No, not really. I asked you about it, and you're explaining your philosophy behind all this. I just wondered, had you discovered, when you add up all these investigations, Paranormal are investigating something, and if you're a scientist or you're a researcher or something, you investigate and you hopefully come to a conclusion at some stage. Now you may have come to a conclusion at this church, this Unitarian church. You've concluded something strange and not very good's going on, and your conclusion might be that it's they don't have a vicar, so therefore maybe it's open to all sorts of strange going on. What has been your conclusion after the period of time you've done this? Have you come to a conclusion? Do you have a theory?
Yeah, I've got theories. We all have theories. My wife did. She had a theory with the vicar element of it. With regards to conclusion, no. And if I ever come up with a conclusion, I will call you back, David. I will let you know, okay? And I will hang up all of my equipment and say, That's the evidence of the paranormal. I have no further interest. But I hope to God, I hope I will never be able to come up with a conclusion, because as long as I stand, I'm going to keep going along on events and look for that Holy Grail. I'm going to look for that full-scale apparition, for that message to be passed across. I don't want to come up with a conclusion for anything at all, because there's always those answers there's always those incidents that there'll never be an answer for, no matter what.
I'm sure you'll open up one door and there'll be another door right behind it. So I don't think you can have there's any fear that you're gonna solve it all that easily. Now, you've got investigations. You've come out of COVID. It's well, I haven't come out of COVID, but you know what I mean. We're no longer in lockdown at this present moment in time, and you've got a whole lot of investigations coming up over the next year. I was looking at the website before, and a lot of them are sold out. So people who want to go to them better get going, because there's some really cool ones there. One with Richard Felix, and you have 30 East Drive, and all sorts of ones around the place. So I know, and as you said before, they're really quite small groups, which is quite unique in some ways, because I think a lot of these investigations, they pack them in high, and you probably don't get the kind of individual attention that you and your wife Anne Marie provide when they're doing the investigations. But what are the kind of places you've not been yet? Because you've obviously you've done the big haunted houses. What is your wish list? What's your bucket list, as it were?
Oh, to hit America. Yeah. They are spoiled over there. They genuinely are spoiled over there. There's so many programs on the TV that obviously you got Ghost Adventures, and there's all sorts of, I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but they always manage to stumble across a disused prison just stood there doing nothing, or an old hospital or something along those lines. They're just, no one's building them, no one's turning them into flats. If it was in the UK, it'd be a block of flats within about a month or 2 months or so. Yeah. Over there, they just stood empty. I'd love to go over there. There's a few places in Ireland. There's an old prison in an island, off Ireland.
Spike Island?
That's the one, yep. I'd love to go there. And you know what? I mean, if anyone, whoever's watching this, if you've got any ideas, hey, we're always up for ideas.
I tend to disagree with you there. When you talk about the Americans being spoilt, yes, they probably are, but I don't think we're hard up here. I think there's plenty of places you can walk around anywhere.
But we've got the history in the UK, though, haven't we?
Yeah, and you've got. It's just you've got to look for them, and it's just hard at times to find places. I think probably what you nailed there, you bang the nail on the head when you said, look, they'll end up becoming flats or something like that if they're in an area. And I think what you find in that church where you did, I think that's quite innovative, and I think you've done that well. So there is obviously places there, and I think with the charity angle, you probably can find yourself into places where others who are just there going, look, we're just coming because we want to have a bit of a nosy around. You're using that to make some money for charity, as well as get into places that have not been investigated before. So I think that's really good, and I think they probably use the term fresh sites as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially with the number of guests that we bring along, the only small number that we take along as well. If you were to take along, let's say, 40 or 50 to the same location on one night, and we take along 15 to 20, there's less of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Less of a noise contamination.
Yeah.
You know, we also split that 15 guests up into 3 smaller groups of 5 each. So again, you've got no noise. You can listen out a lot better than what you can with a big crowd of people. And like you mentioned, like what I've said as well, like how we like to go along, we've got the more personal experience. So all of the equipment, we haven't got loads because we pay for the equipment out of our own pockets. Oh, I pay for it out of my own pocket, should I say. The guests can use the equipment a lot more. And they can choose what they want to use. We can go along with them. We can show them the best way of doing it. We tend to say that no one piece of equipment is effective on its own. Try to evidence what you're capturing with something else. We use an SLS camera, but an SLS camera, it can pick up pipes and try to transform the image into a stickman image form, you know that. So we always try and use a digital thermometer, or an infrared camera alongside it as well. So you're seeing from both angles just to make sure what one piece of equipment's seeing, the other one is also seeing, and then you've got something to talk about.
So it looks like people going on one of your investigations are going to get a lot of hands-on experience, a lot of personal attention in some very unique and interesting places.
We spoiled them rotten, David.
Well, that sounds good to me. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Rob. Now, the website is. Tell me the website.
Website is, we've got www.veritasparanormaluk.com.
Okay, I'll make sure I put that in a link. I'll also link to your Facebook page and other social media so people get in touch. I'd love to come on one of your investigations, maybe in the new year if there's some spots left, because it is going fast. But no doubt you'll be piling some new ones on any day now.
Absolutely.
Okay, you have a great one, and we look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Thank you, David.